I'm from Sierra Leone. I came to America as an immigrant, and I need to tell you something most Africans won't admit. We arrive in this country looking down on African Americans. And we have no right to, no history, no context, no right. When I went back to Sierra Leone in my early teens, we were reading Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, Shakespeare in school. You know who we never read? W.E.B. Du Bois. James Baldwin, Toni Morrison. Not one, not ever, not once. That is not an accident. That's colonial education designed to disconnect us from our history, from our struggle, from each other. Before Africans come to America, we know nothing about African Americans except music videos and movies. We see the poverty, we see the violence, we see the performance, but we do not see the policy. We don't see the history. We don't see the 400 years of theft. We don't know that every single right we have as African immigrants, every protection, every opportunity, every door that opens exists because African Americans bled for it. The Civil Rights Act, the voting rights, fair housing, that wasn't given, that was taken. They faced police dogs, fire hoses, bombs in churches. They were lynched for organizing, assassinated for speaking. And we benefit from it the second we step off the plane, but we don't learn that. We're never taught that. We arrive ignorant and call it pride. So we come to America carrying white supremacist thought, and we don't even know it. We look at African Americans and think, why can't they just work hard like us? Why are they so angry? Why don't they pull themselves up? We repeat that. We believe it. We become it. We judge without remembering they're descendants of people, of us, who were enslaved for 400 years and denied everything after emancipation. We don't know about redlining. We don't know about sharecropping, convict leasing, the destruction of Black Wall Street. We don't know about COINTELPRO. We don't know the government-orchestrated crack epidemic. We don't know wealth compounds, and African Americans were systematically prevented from building any. We judge them for the effects. We ignore the cause. We repeat the lie. White supremacy is brilliant. It separated us before we ever met. It taught Africans we're better, more dignified, more hardworking, more pure. It taught us to see African Americans as lazy, criminal, inferior. Meanwhile, it taught African Americans that Africans sold them, which is true but incomplete because it erases European demand, European ships, European guns, European economic system that created the trade. The system wins when we're divided, when we say, I'm not like them. We're doing white supremacy's work, people, for free, with pride, with ignorance, wrapped in respectability. African Americans built this country with their hands, with their blood, with their bodies turned into capital. Then they were freed into a system designed to re-enslave them. Then they organized, then they fought, then they died, and then they won the rights the whole world benefits from. The anti-colonial movements in Africa were inspired by the Black Power movement. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X influenced liberation struggles globally. African Americans gave us language, strategy, and vision to fight oppression everywhere. And we repay them with judgment. We repay them with distance. We repay them by repeating white supremacist talking points. We have to address this ignorance. We have to stop it. We have to end it. We're not better. We're not smarter. We're not more deserving. We're just luckier to avoid the specific machinery of American anti-blackness. But make no mistake, to white supremacy, we're all the same. The moment we stop being useful, we're just another target. We need to learn African American history. We need to read their thinkers, their revolutionaries. We need to read their poets, understand their struggle, not as separate from ours, but as the foundation beneath our feet. If you're African, immigrant, Caribbean, anyone who came here and benefited from African American blood, you owe them your respect. You owe them your solidarity. You owe them the humility to learn before you judge. Stop peddling white supremacist thought. Stop distancing yourself to feel safe. Stop letting the system use you as a wedge against the people who built the road you're walking on. We're all Black in America, all of us, every single one. The sooner we stand together, not in competition, not in judgment, but in recognition, the sooner we can all be free. The ignorance has to end. It starts with us. It starts with admitting we carried it here, over the Atlantic. It starts with putting it.
As an African woman living in the United States, I have never experienced prejudice from Black Americans or African Americans, however you call yourself. Never. I came to this country and I was embraced and welcomed by them. They love me. I love them back. Like, I found my people for real. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I found my people because they're really open-minded compared to Africans. And I've always been a very open-minded person, like very, very open-minded person. And I just feel like I didn't fit there. I didn't fit with y'all Africans. I love us though. I love us so much. Like, I love my roots. I love where I come from. But I can just with y'all to a certain extent because certain conversations I can't have with y'all because y'all too prejudiced about things. You know what I mean? Y'all not open-minded enough for me, at least. But y'all come here in the United States with preconceived notions already. All y'all have to say about black people in America is they're ghetto, they're this, they're that. Yeah, they might be a little ghetto, just like y'all a little ghetto over there too. Y'all need to stop acting like there's no ghetto people over there.
If you were to ask an average uneducated African anything about America, the first thing that would come to their mind is America is a white people's land. And an averagely educated African would probably still have the same concept about America, maybe just knowing that there are a few black people who they can't even tell how they happen to be in a white man's land and they are bad people. Now, before Africans and black Americans ever meet, they are already seriously and severely divided, not by culture, not by character, not by distance, but actually by colonial education, by the media, and by white supremacist narratives and systems that teach us the wrong stories and the wrong story about each other. Most Africans, believe me, grow up believing that America is a white people's land and that black Americans are invincible in those stories. Or, well, if they are there, then they are reduced to mere stereotypes. So when Africans arrive in America for the first time, they don't arrive neutral in their minds. They arrived misinformed, confident, and carrying ideas that were planted long before they ever met other black people in America. And this is what people are not talking about. And this is what we are all not talking about. And we have to talk about it. So I want to roll some clips and let's listen. And I'll see you on the other side of this.
Why is there so much tension between African Americans and African immigrants? The anger is real and righteous, but deeply misunderstood. Some Africans are still carrying hurt from being called things like African booty scratcher and being made fun of for their accents and clothing. But hear me, that pain does not justify hating a whole group of people. Principle has to come before personality. Many African immigrants are taught a survival tactic from the moment they arrive. Work hard, stay quiet, and distance yourself from African Americans. It's practical, it works, and you're often rewarded with respect and opportunities that you might otherwise be denied. Many are also escaping violence and very harsh living conditions, determined to make it big, and are often supporting family back home. That focus can make their quest in America feel selfish, and they may not be invested in politics, but they should be. You can't just discard the people who gave you those opportunities. But that cloak is a false safety net, and when racism comes knocking on your door, and it will, you'll be reminded that you're just another black person. Meanwhile, African Americans built this country brick by brick, pun intended, through blood, labor, and sacrifice. And then they have to watch new arrivals like us walk into opportunities that they're denied. That anger is not jealousy. It's a demand for justice, for recognition for everything they've given and everything stolen from them. White people prefer to work with Africans because it allows them to avoid the proximity to slavery and other cruel acts that they've committed while having the cloak of diversity and inclusion. It's all about their comfort and avoiding the guilt of facing African Americans. This is all an old playbook, separating people, creating hierarchies, and spreading myths about who's better or more deserving. Here's the truth. Our struggles have always been connected. The courage and tactics of the civil rights movement didn't just change America. It helped inform and inspire decolonization in Africa. Seeing a minority group fight the world's most powerful country gave African nations the courage to rise and claim independence. Whiteness doesn't even tell their own children the history or the truth. They ban books just to keep these systems alive. They're certainly not going to tell us the truth. So it's on us to read, to see these systems clearly, and to love each other enough to break them.
As an African living in the United States, I used to share the same sentiment that Africans share about African Americans because I had a hard time when I first moved here. People used to always tell me, you're not black enough, you're an Oreo, you're secretly white on the inside, as if I wasn't literally from Africa. But I now understand after living here for 8 years that black in the United States is a very specific criteria and anything outside of that just doesn't fit. But I want to help African Americans understand that Africans coming to the United States are immigrants, first and foremost. Then they are Nigerian or Senegalese or whatever country they're from. And then at some point, they are black. But Africans don't put black high up on their identity well as much as African Americans do. And that is for legitimate reasons on both ends. And so when an African is coming to the United States, they're thinking to themselves, okay, I'm an immigrant here. I have to do my best for myself and my family back home. The sacrifices that took for me to get here were no light work, okay? So I need to really align myself with what's going to make me successful in this country. And because it's the United States, it's the dominant culture, which is white American culture. And so Africans are going to instinctively ally themselves with the culture that's going to give them the most success. I mean, African Americans even admit that they have to code switch to be successful here because that's what brings success. And so Africans are like, all right, we'll do that. And it also doesn't help that for a long time, Africans are fed a very negative view of Black American culture, and that's its own propaganda. But because Africans are so conservative and they're coming to a country where Black Americans have been labeled as the antithesis to this conservative traditional family values, they have, if anything, more in common with Southern Baptist white racist people. But that aside, going back to identity markers, Black Americans put Black first and foremost, and then everything else goes below it. And so they're thinking when another Black people come to our country, they're going to want to integrate with us, the other Black people, because Black comes first. And they get quickly disappointed in realizing that for Africans, Black and the identity and that coming is not first. Their immigrant identity comes first, and then their country. And if anything, for us as Africans to feel like that's my brother, that's my brethren, or whatever, you have to come from the same tribe as us, because we have so many Black people around, we don't automatically pre-select for Black. But Black Americans don't have so many Black people around, have had to defend and protect their culture amidst a dominant white culture. And so they already pre-select and are overprotective for Black. And so that's why I think at the core of it, there's a deep misunderstanding because of not realizing that we put where we put our identity markers and what we put first and what we prioritize are so different culturally because of our differences in trauma, realistically. And so it does make sense that Black Americans will be like, oh, my people, my brethrens, come here. And African Americans, or Africans, coming to the United States are like, I'm just trying to make it here. It's a lot of work to immigrate to the United States. And so y'all can stay over there, and I can see why it's hurtful, and I can see why it's taken personally, and I can see the deep misunderstanding and the betrayal that African Americans feel. But it's unfortunate, and that's just a reality. But if we can talk about it from this perspective, I think we can get to a better understanding. But I also believe that Africans that spend enough time in the United States get to this compassion and understanding of the Black American community, because it is a very unique and specific set of circumstances for a culture to grow and to develop.
Imagine playing a game where the rules are rigged against you from the start. Every time you take a step forward, the game changes and the goalposts are moved further away. This is the reality that African Americans have faced here in America. A never-ending struggle where for centuries the odds have been stacked against them. I have to admit, when I first moved here to America, I used to hear harmful rhetoric from my African friends, my relatives. Oh, Akata people are lazy. Akata this, Akata that. What I didn't understand is that African Americans have been playing a rigged game their entire existence here in the United States. Underfunded schools, liquor stores, drugs rampant around every block in their neighborhoods, redlining and rezoning, taking away healthy grocery stores, replacing them with fast food chains, having to be overqualified just to apply to entry-level jobs and menial jobs. African Americans have built, fought, bled for this country despite the system being rigged against them. They were not given a fair start. They were not given a fair shot. Yet they still managed to endure and persevere. It's time we stop letting stereotypes and harmful rhetoric break us down. Together, we can rewrite the rules. Our strength lies in unity. Together, we can win this game. We can create a game where we all win. Are you ready to play the game?
Even though I want to disagree with you, I get where you're coming from. When I see black people talking about racism, all that stuff, I'm like, what is wrong with these people? You guys have food, you have EBT, all this thing, and you're here shouting about somebody is racist too. Just leave that person and move on. I feel that way. Like, why are they always like complaining? But when Black Lives Matters started happening, like, I sat down, I said, I need to actually know why these people are pained. And if we look at the history, what they've done to them, like if you actually sit down, watch some documentaries, how they were maltreated, I don't think if I'm actually born, I will forgive those people. I don't care. It's easier for us Africans that were raised in Africa to feel like they're complaining because we were raised through struggle. Like I barely even have water, and you have water, you're complaining. But then it's not about the basic necessity or about how we are raised. We are raised like, I don't want to say way better. We might not have resources, but there are some way, like our own people will not look down on us or put us behind. So it's in they're nurtured that way. Like they just can't overlook it. And if you sit down and watch everything that the forefathers have been through for you, I changed my mind. No, they need to be angry. However, they should still move forward.
I feel like a lot of Africans don't understand the African American experience. I never knew until I came here and started learning the history of what happened here. Like all the way from the end of slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, the civil rights movement, the pipeline from the school to prison pipeline.
The prison industrial complex.
Yeah, like all of this stuff. I don't think Africans have an idea of all these things that are put against African Americans to become successful. Like even the Africans that are brought here, we're brought and we're put into like nicer neighborhoods. They don't put us in Southside Chicago in like the worst neighborhoods where you literally have to get a gun to survive, where you have to, like, you're fighting for your life. They put us in nice neighborhoods, and then
talk about the churches, how they will indoctrinate you.
How white people are nicer to Africans than African Americans.
Like charity that is given to Africans through these, religious organizations and just like philanthropy. It's like, we got to help these people in Africa. And that's a whole other conversation in itself. That white savior conversation in itself, but we receive like a sympathetic lens on
so acknowledge the fact that happens over here in the United States, but then you have the mirror on the other side. If you're African American and you go to these other countries, especially these Muslim countries, these European countries, if you have that American visa, it's different.
Yeah.
Compared to if you're just Sudanese going to just
African.
you're not having the same experience.
The visa, the American visa hits differently.
So I think stereotyping lies at the heart of why a lot of times, or sometimes, African Americans and Africans don't get along. So this first video is about the stereotypes that African Americans have about Africans, and I am an African American. First one, all Africans are just can't wait to come to America. Wrong. I'm gonna need my African Americans to take the time to learn actually the political economy of Africa. Not all Africans are coming here to study. There are some other alignments. Some are going to Russia. They're going other places in Europe. They're going to Latin America. So that is not true. Not every African over in Africa or what specific countries all are just cannot wait to come to America. That is absolutely not true. And not all want to, and not all of them do. Many Africans from all different countries find success in their own country. But again, let's learn about political economy, because you have to know the country. There's other countries that they might be aligned with, not to say that they even want to leave their own country. That's the first one. Number 2, all of the African men from every African country have more than one wife, or they can have more than one wife. That is also not true. Okay? Polygamy and polygyny are real phenomenons around the world. And as an anthropologist, I can kind of tell you, yes, you have the cultural value, but when we actually do the research about things like polygyny or polygamy, so, doing the research just to define the terms, societies where women marry more than one man, or societies where men marry more than one woman. Again, you could challenge me on this, but I think I'm going to be right, even if it is in your culture. When we do the anthropological work and look at the demography, what we always find is that it's kind of a structural issue. So yes, there's a culture thing, but you might just find that there are more men than women or women than men. And I will say this, in America, we actually find that today in the African American community. Now, we're not getting married at any high rate, honestly. I love my culture, but these are just statistical facts. That's another discussion. However, what you do find in a lot of our communities you're finding a lot more women than men. So what are you finding? You're still finding units being created, but you're finding a phenomenon where one man will have more than one woman. Again, I'm not getting into the moral value. I'm not getting into where that's right or wrong. I'm just getting into what happens in societies. But back to the point, this is simply not true. That's going to depend on the culture. Even in the Muslim faith, you can have more than one wife, but there are a lot of prescriptions about what you have to do that. And it's simply not true. There's a lot of places where you can only have one wife, so that's a stereotype. Number 3, Africans coming over here don't have decent, safe homes with plumbing, electricity. They don't have cars. They don't have running water. Simply not true. On the whole, that is not true. Okay, so stop stereotyping. But while we're stereotyping, I think a lot of African Americans and Americans, period, need to remember areas of Kentucky, Tennessee, Appalachia, out west, where you will actually find not just the poverty, but you'll find rural places where they may not exactly have all of these things, or it may not look like an urban environment. But again, it's not true. There are huge metropolises, cities, there's wealth there. So that is a big stereotype. And if you don't believe me, you can go to a couple places. For instance, and people argue, having been to Accra, you go there and you're like, whoa, Accra is like the London or, the New York of one of the Londons or New Yorks of Africa. Everyone's there. So I know you see a lot of things watching safari films, but that is just simply not true. Oh, also along those lines, the other stereotype is they live with wild animals. And so, yeah, again, stop watching all of these safari videos. I've actually been to a zoo. Personally, I think zoos are kind of cruel, but they exist everywhere. Now, when we're talking about wild animals, well, Americans a lot of times live with wild animals. Like if you go up to Pennsylvania, there's a lot of bear up there. There's some in California. There's, some in Virginia. Where I am, we have deer. We have, where I grew up, we have bobcats. Out west, they have all of these things. So no, they don't all live with wild animals. However, some of them do, and some of us do too. We just don't call them wild. But me, being from the middle of the United States, when I go to Florida and I see those alligators and crocodiles, I'm sorry, I'm saying the same thing. Y'all live with wild animals because you do. Stop stereotyping. Next one, I think this is really important. They don't like African Americans. So I find this one to be most disturbing because it's like, and this happens a lot, you don't even give somebody a chance. You just say, oh, they don't like this. They think this and that about us. No, on the whole, I really don't think it's true. I think Americans in general are a country full of people who really doesn't go to other places. I mean, on the whole, you could probably check it statistically. We really don't travel outside of our world. So we don't know what it's like. We don't know what it's like to go to a place where that is not your first language. The customs are different. Everything's different. You know, what if you come from a place where they have bidets and now you come here and they don't have bidets? There's Muslim cultures where you do certain things with certain hands. Greeting people, how you socialize, the things that you can buy in the restaurant. So I think it would be safe to assume, in my experience, that just because you have one bad experience with one person from somewhere in Africa, that doesn't mean that that person doesn't like African Americans. But also, African Americans, we have to take the time or challenge ourselves to go experience and live someplace and see what it feels like. See how you can be quiet. See how, when you're in a different place, you might be confused. You might not understand the social gestures. So that's just a short list. And let's work on some of those things, African Americans. Thank you.
Africans do not like Black Americans. So this is a fact.
No, it's an opinion, and a very asinine one at that. Because Africa is a continent with 54 countries and over 1.2 billion people. A statement such as Africans don't like African Americans is a very ludicrous statement because one, is perpetuating this narrative that there is beef and animosity between Africans and African Americans. And two, what that is doing is it's generalizing an entire continent based off of the actions of a couple of African hairdressers who live in America. And this is coming from someone who has traveled to 4 out of 54 of the African countries. Okay, so I went to Tanzania and I was treated like royalty. People were bowing at my feet. I felt like I was some type of long lost queen who had finally returned to the land. Let's talk about Ghana. Ghana was one of the most beautiful countries that I ever visited. I had a family who opened up their home to me. They were feeding me 3 times a day. We were living by the beach. They were doing so much to just make me feel welcomed and loved. So this is for all of my African American people. Go to Africa. Go to the different countries that are there. Learn some of the languages. Learn some of the cultures there, because this is the thing. There are more similarities than differences between Africans and African Americans. And we need to kill this narrative. We need to break the plane and start the conversation so that we can get to know each other.
All right, so I want us to break down something a little bit, this full concept in you. And first of all, what Africans are actually taught, because the uneducated African does not even know the existence of Black people in America, most of them, and I'm telling you this from a point of information. But those that are taught, what are they taught about Black Americans? Most Africans know Black Americans through music videos, movies, crime news, poverty without context, the ghettos, and but without context of how did it happen. But what are Africans not taught? Because that is where the main point lies, that Black Americans build America and America's wealth, that they fought for civil rights with their blood, their tears, their sweat, and even their lives. And that every legal protection that immigrants, especially Black immigrants, enjoy today in America, it's because of, Black Americans that forced the state and the government successfully to concede. So Africans arrive seeing outcomes, but they never see the causes, the backstory, the struggle. And that is ignorance, but that is ignorance that is produced, that is manufactured. Now, this leads us to I want to talk about colonial education, how it did this. So Africans are taught to actually admire Eurocentric ideas and whiteness. And this does not just affect Black people, Black Americans from the African perspective. It even affects Africans themselves. They read about Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, but they never read about De Boer, Baldwin, Malcolm X, Toni Morrison, Martin Luther. In fact, only at advanced levels that they get to know anything like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And in many cases, they're just mentions, not even honorable mentions, let alone their stories being taught. They're just mentioned. In fact, Africans know more about Europe and Europeans than they know about Africa. So it's not even hate for Black Americans, it's self-hate and anything close to them. Africans are taught European humanity and they are denied Black resistance and Black resilience. So Africans arrive in America historically illiterate, very illiterate about Black people in America, the Black struggle, yet they are confident enough to judge it because of the stereotypes. And now, this leads us to talk about the stereotypes from an African perspective, because there are stereotypes even from Black Americans to Africa now. But for Africans, it is conditioning. Many Africans come to America believing Black Americans are lazy, they complain too much, they don't value education, they are poor, they love drugs, they love crime. And these are white supremacist talking points, recycled unconsciously. So this is like Africans becoming white supremacist. Well, because they cannot become white, and so they are not white supremacist, but then enforcing ideas of white supremacist. Well, to the disadvantage of Black Americans and themselves. And Africans judge effects while ignoring redlining, mass incarcerations, the destruction of Black wealth, and just so many other things that happened to, the Blacks in America. That judgment isn't moral superiority. It is colonial programming that's taught, and they end up believing they're better. Now, there's something else I want to talk about, and I want us to highlight is why many Africans always seek white spaces, or they aggravate. And this is the uncomfortable part, but it's very necessary. Many Africans gravitate towards white spaces and white power structure and white people in general when they get to America. And the reason is whiteness was taught as legitimacy way back in Africa. They don't even love themselves. They'd rather look at the amount of Black people in Africa who want to whiten or want to straighten their hair so they are wavy and straight, because everything is taught from a European perspective, such that they don't even love themselves. I know this is also a problem that affects Black people in America, but it's heavy. It's really also heavy with the Africans. And so when whiteness is taught as legitimacy, as the beauty, as the center of everything, and Black resistance is then framed as failure, as bad, proximity to whiteness is then framed as success. So when people leave Africa who are hungry for success, and they know that whiteness equates success, no wonder they gravitate towards white spaces. And this is basically not natural. It is learned behavior. It is conditioning. Now, what must Africans do though? Africans must learn real Black history, especially if you're going to travel to America or you have traveled to America. And if at least you're someone who knows something about being black, because these are the same problems that in a different sense are affecting Africans back at home. No wonder the corporates making billions of dollars selling whitening creams to Africans because they want to whiten. Sad. But again, then they as Africans must understand, or we must understand, that immigrant opportunities, they rest on black sacrifices. If anything, that black immigrants, or even immigrants generally from wherever they come from in the world to America, the opportunities they have are generally because of the struggles and the sacrifices of the black community in America. And then they have to stop equating assimilation with success. Again, Africans must unlearn colonial ideas about dignity and worth. You cannot be so brainwashed to even hate yourself and anything close to you. And that solidarity begins with educating yourself, not going to education, conventional style of going to school, but really learning about black people, what happened to them, how they happen to exist in America, and what they have gone through. So solidarity begins with self-education, I must say. Now, but what must, or I think that black Americans also need to understand about the people that are coming, especially Africans, that many Americans, Africans don't arrive hateful. They arrive miseducated and totally ignorant of the facts, Their misconceptions were planted long before their arrival by colonial schooling in their countries and, of course, Western media. And understanding that, understanding that doesn't, exclude the harm. What it does is it explains it. Why are these people behaving this way? Why do they love to be close to white people? It really should tell you that, it's not an excuse, but it really will tell black Americans how and why these people behave this way. And explanation is necessary for unity, by the way. And that's basically what we're trying to do here. So, white supremacy didn't just oppress Africans, didn't just oppress African Americans, it divided them on deliberate terms and for a very good purpose. It taught Africans to feel superior. It taught black Americans to feel abandoned. But to the system, unfortunately, black is black. There is no difference between these people. There is no difference between us. For the system, it's all systems go when it comes to dealing with them, to dealing with us, So unity doesn't start with emotion. It really starts with the truth. It really starts with learning. It begins with unlearning what we are taught about each other and learning what's true about each other. Yeah, so there's a lot to be done. And if we don't take the initiative to do it ourselves, because even if you look at the stereotypes are from both sides. Africans are taught stereotypes about Black Americans, and Black Americans are taught some stereotypes about Africa. And then those becomes the preconceived ideas we have about each other, sadly. Yeah, so if we don't work on trying to correct, relearn, and unlearn, then we still have a long way to go in terms of fighting. Yeah, so that is what I had to share with you in this video. Do share with me your thoughts in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe if you haven't.